Hey guys, this is the last day of propagation week, and today we are going to be propagating something super simple. It's one of my favorite foliage plants. It's pothos, otherwise known as Epipremnum aureum. And if you do a quick scan around me, you'll see tons of it hanging around, going up the trellis, scrambling down my mirror, even some behind me. And the reason why I have so much of it in my house is because it does well in low to medium light conditions, which is what most of our homes and our apartments have. So it's a tremendous plant, tremendous grower, and luckily, one of the easiest to propagate. You'll notice I have a few things here on the table. I have some water propagation chambers, as well as some sphagnum moss. And we're actually going to be propagating some of the pothos in sphagnum moss today. I'll actually show you what some of the roots look like when it's developing in a water chamber. However, you might have some challenges taking that pothos. These aren't pothos, these are syndapsis, but you might have trouble taking that pothos from water roots to soil roots, as I will show you a little later after we do the propagation, because I took some of those cuttings from the water and transferred them directly to the soil, and they kind of just wilted right away. So I'll go over different ways that you could help prevent that or be a little bit more proactive in the way of helping the plants transition from a water environment to a soil environment. If you'll see here, I'm going to just show you some water roots really quickly. I'm going to take this out here. And you can see there's a very extensive root system that's happening here. And these water roots are quite nice. They look really healthy. And some people are like, well, how do you actually have roots in water? Like, can they actually breathe? Well, water has oxygen in it. And when you put something in a soil, compacted soil filled with water, that fills up all the air holes within that soil, and that could asphyxiate the roots. Whereas when it's in water, the water actually has the oxygen flowing in there. It's also a good form to be able to change the water now and again. I'm not going to get too in-depth into water roots versus soil roots, but I do go more in-depth in it in the Houseplant Masterclass, so you could actually check that out online at houseplantmasterclass.com. But in the meantime, we're going to be propagating this beast over here. So if you get a little bit closer to this, you can see it's a very long Epipremnum aureum, but you'll see some of these are bare in the middle, like this one would be a great one to propagate because you could see there it's like missing leaves right here. And if you come in close, you'll see these aerial roots that are growing just at the base right near the nodes of these leaves. Now, if you're going to be propagating a plant, you really want to be cutting at a 45-degree angle below that aerial root. And generally, I like to have at least 2, maybe 3 little leaflets on the top, and then 2 or maybe even 3 nodes at the bottom that I could stick directly into a substrate or into the water. Now, these aerial roots are important for this plant. I have this plant cascading down, but this is also a plant that could grow upright on a sphagnum pole or on a tree, which is typically how you'd see it in the wild. And the way that these plants work in the wild is that they'll trail until they find something vertical, and then they'll shoot up onto the vertical tree, and that's when they start to get those larger leaves and take in more of that sunlight. But before we cut this, we're going to sterilize the scissors. And the reason for that is because you are not sure where the scissors have been. So I just have some isopropyl alcohol here, and I'm going to put it on this little cloth and just give them a really quick wipe down. I actually cut some Plectranthus or coleus in my house, and I noticed that I had some mealybugs. So it's always like, you know, good to be able to just give it a little wipe down, let that dry out. With this one, I would probably keep this because this is all nice and has plenty of foliage, and all of these are looking pretty good, but I'm gonna clip this at a 45-degree angle right below the node. All right. You'll see in this like internode region, it's just like this empty little stem. I'm going to cut this back again at a 45-degree angle up until this little guy here. And chances are it'll start developing other branches off of this. just like that, just to keep it clean. So this is a little bit of a longer cutting than I typically like to take, but it's so healthy up on top here. And you'll notice that it already has these 3 nodes. Actually, it looks like it even has 4, because those internodes are really close together. But I'm just gonna clip off some of the last leaves here because it doesn't need all those leaves. And I might actually just take off a couple of these end nodes here because I don't need so many nodes to root up. In fact, I might even take off this one right here. At first, it may seem a little bit dramatic that you're actually taking off so much of the plant, but you know, plants, especially pothos, react extremely well to being propagated. They actually get a little bit bushier if you even cut them back to the base. So this one I am not going to put into a water chamber in order to be able to root it, even though it's very common for us houseplant enthusiasts to root it that way. But I've never met a grower who actually roots plants in water. So I'm going to do something that most growers will do. They'll either take a potting medium, or in this case, I'm going to take sphagnum, and I'm going to wrap it around the root. And because this is growing in a substrate, even though it is not exactly a soil substrate, this will probably go into a soil substrate much easier. So I'm going to push that down in here. And I'm going to make sure to cover a couple of the nodes in the substrate, because that will give it a better chance to root. And you don't need to let these cuts that you did in this plant callus over much in the same way that if you had, you know, a succulent or a cacti, if you will. Right? And this sphagnum is already pretty moist. Doing it in a dry sphagnum wouldn't work, but you could just easily moist some long fiber sphagnum, and you mix it around in your hand like that, and so you'll get this really nice resilient material. And if people send me like plants in sphagnum, if I know that that plant was not contaminated with any pestiferous insects, I will use the sphagnum over again, just because this is a natural resource that is pretty much non-renewable. It takes a long time to develop peat, and it's often farmed in peat bogs. So I consider this something that's a very precious resource, but so vital in the horticultural industry. So there you go. That is just as easy as it looks. That is going to be rooting this pothos, and this will probably root up in no time. I mean, maybe 2 weeks, you'll actually start seeing some little roots forming. But why don't we step back here for a moment, because I want to show you that I took some of my water root cuttings that I did and planted them back here, and they're not doing so well, and I'm just going to show you why. So you'll notice that I've cut back or planted some other pothos or Epipremnum aureum back here, but you'll notice some of my water root cuttings are not looking so hot. And it's because I had them as water root cuttings and I put them directly into soil. And sometimes the plant struggles in that situation because water roots are very different from soil roots, and they have to get accustomed to growing in the soil. Sometimes what's good to do is actually put this into a potting medium, maybe with some vermiculite or perlite or maybe some sphagnum, and help those roots adjust a little bit better. Since these aren't looking really good, I'm going to just cut them back again past their nodes, and perhaps like little sections of them will be able to bush out again. And you might feel bad actually cutting these all the way, but again, the plant really reacts fine to being cut. And if you could propagate these, great. These are looking a little wilty, so I wouldn't even try to propagate these again. I'll probably end up just composting these. And there you go. That is a pothos propagation and cutting. I'm curious about the different ways that you've propagated pothos. Share them in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this channel, feel free to subscribe and click on the notifications bell if you want to be informed when the next video is live. Remember, you can always check out my blog at homesteadbrooklyn.com, my daily journey on Instagram at homesteadbrooklyn, and get more in tune with your houseplant cultivation and care with my online course at
houseplantmasterclass.com.